Okay, I can see that a couple of you are typing, so I'll just wait for the for some of the comments to come through. Okay, Dr. Muhammadullah Khan says if they get grades for it, it would rather motivate them. That's interesting because I think grades are always a factor that would, in theory, motivate students. So that's definitely a point. And Dr. Surab says if the teacher is motivated and well prepared, the learners can feel on their toes as well. Yes, I think yes. A lot of times I think we tend to say things like, "Oh, my students are demotivated," or "My students don't want to do something." But I think that that's a really good approach of thinking that the teacher is in the driving seat here. So the teacher is the one who can take the students forward. The teacher is the person who can raise the motivation level of the class with some of the various tactics that you spoke about with Nick and Terry over the last couple of days. Definitely. Dr. Zaid says it will be more appropriate if they have the same materials as they have in the student book. It will help them to revise. I would agree with that to a certain extent, Dr. Zaid. So I do think it is comforting on some levels to have the same themes and the same format as a student book. However, it can sometimes seem a bit boring to students, and that's why there's a different approach here. And so there's always room to change things a little bit, to have a bit of variety with how we present our lessons to them. Dr. Muhammad Ashfaq says we can give it as a collaborative task group work and hope it will add to their motivation. Yes, I love the idea, definitely. Dr. Ahmed Shamali says connect the topic to their real experiences. Yes, some really good ideas here. And Dr. Muhammad says we are teaching EGP, dealing EGP. Okay, so yes, so general English in the first semester. Yeah, so all of these comments are really good, and I do think some really good ideas here. And if I were to suggest something, I would say, maybe if we have a theme that's revolved around technology, and we know some things our students are interested in, like maybe our students are interested in the latest technology in maybe mobile phones, for example. And so you could have like an activity that precedes some of the online activities where we use it to generate interest from our students. Maybe we ask them to look at what's in the online practice here and what they are interested in as a comparison. But yeah, some of the ideas that have been mentioned, the collaborative idea, the idea that the teacher would motivate the students, some really good ideas here as well. And Dr. Ahmed Shah says the student knows why they're taking the course. Yeah, I think that's really important. They would have the self-motivation. Yeah, and I think that is a complaint that comes in, or not a complaint, but an issue with some students and some teachers, I would say, especially at the age group that we deal with. So the students are not always aware of the reason for them studying English and how it would help them. And I think that's where the teacher's role comes in not only teaching them the language, but also, showing them why they learn English and what are the opportunities that they would have, when they learn English, and how it's helped some people who have come before them. So I would definitely agree with that, Dr. Ahmed, as well. Okay, so what I want to do now is just to show you some parts of the content in Milestones. Then we'll look at some other features of OxfordLearn, and then if we have time, we'll look at the assessment part or the test part as well, just so you're aware of some of the features that you can make use of if you want to. Okay, so the reading, as I mentioned, is divided into 3 parts, as is the listening and as is the speaking. And I'm just going to go through these very quickly here just to bring up the menus. As you can see, all divided into 3 parts. So we have reading 1, R1, R2, R3, and then we have the same for L1, L2, L3, etc., etc. And you'll notice that the themes are different for each of the skills. And I think this is something for you to also focus on as well as a teacher, is that it's not the same reoccurring theme. So for example, the first theme in reading is technology, but as some of you mentioned, that might not interest the student. What we haven't done is we haven't repeated the same theme for all 4 skills. We have 3 different themes for every 4 skill, and that basically means we have 12 themes in every single book. And I think 12 themes, our students should be interested in at least some of those themes. And so maybe as a teacher, if you had the luxury of prioritizing, then you could prioritize what you think your students are most interested in. And so R1 here starts with an engage activity, and I'll just quickly go through these with you. And then if you have any comments or any questions, please feel free to write them in the chat box. So Dr. Ahmed says, my voice comes and goes. So I'm going to try and keep my microphone closer to my mouth, and hopefully that will be clearer for you as I speak, because I'm using a headset. Okay, so the engage part, as you can see here, the idea here is to generate the interest of the students. So asking them just to look at the images and to think about, what they know about the different types of energy, and then to write some ideas, and possibly to use their notes, the note area to write their ideas, and to use them in the upcoming reading task. And so as you can see here, this is not graded for the students. There's no automatic grade. It's just a way of having them to engage with the activity that's coming, giving them the opportunity to produce some language without any assessment element. So they're not being judged, they're not being assessed, they're not being evaluated. They're just being asked to think about a theme, maybe self-activating the schemata and the vocab that they may have pre-learned in class, or they may have learned previously in other contexts as well. But you can skip this with your students. So this is obviously optional when you're doing the online activities with your students. So the next activity would be explore. And now this is graded. So what we're asking our students here to do in the reading is to match the verbs to the definition. So we have about 9 verbs here, and we want the students to match the correct verb to the definition, or vice versa. So taking something out of using an industrial or chemical process, and that could be release, it could be extract. And I personally think it's probably extract, and then the students can just drag and drop here, and then they can think about it, and maybe they can go back to their answers later on and see. So for example, take something away, and maybe we'd use remove here, make something happen. So we could use maybe cause, and so on. And the students may think about changing their answer and keep dragging and dropping, and then going down here and clicking finally submit. And as you can see, it will give them a reminder if they haven't answered all of the questions. It will say to them, please go back and finish all of the questions, because if you click submit now, you will be marked as incorrect for the questions that you haven't answered. So it does give them that reminder. But if I click on OK, it will tell me that I got 2 out of 9. So these 2 were correct, and the remaining answers were wrong. And so this is just the instant feedback that students get, and this has actually been proven through research to be very motivating for students, because a student gets instant feedback, so they know immediately they know what they did right and what they did wrong. And there's nothing worse than a student investing some time and some effort and thinking about the right answers, only to have to wait for their teacher to give them their grades, and the next day or later on in the day, etc. The next activity will be a reading task. So we're asking the students to actually follow a task here in this unit. And as you can see, it gives them some reading material here. So the FRAC process is part of extractive surface. Really nice about this activity is they can practice their listening skills as well as their reading skills as well when they're doing this activity. Okay, so the next task that we have is sorry. So here we're asking our students to do another reading task, and this is slightly different. So what we're asking the students to do is just to label. So the first one was drag and drop, match the correct verb to the definition, and then we had put the events in the right sequence. Now we're asking our students to produce something into the spaces here. Now, what do you think some of the benefits of this are? Is moving the students to typing? From your experience, when we ask our students to do an activity and we ask them to type a word or a phrase, what do you think some of the benefits are for our students? Yes. Yes, spelling. So spelling is a skill that is constantly overlooked in this day and age with autocorrect. And I definitely agree that asking our students to type a word or phrase, it asks them to focus on their spelling. I definitely agree with that. Recalling the vocab as well. Yes, a really good point. And it is challenging for them. Yes, if it's a phrase, then we're asking them to understand, but not only understand Dr. Muhammad Salim, but also to produce the correct word structure. So yeah, understanding and producing the correct word structure as well, and to build their vocab. Definitely agree with Dr. Ahmed as well. There is something that none of you have mentioned, so I'll just wait for your colleagues to finish typing before I say it. I'll come back to your question, Dr. Afnan, about the number of tasks. Dr. Fahad says they have to think and use comprehension of the vocab. Definitely, yeah. So they think about the vocab. So they're practicing their reading here, but they're also thinking about vocab as well. And this is linking the different skills together. Okay, there's another skill which I think is important here, and I wonder if you would agree with me or not. It's typing. So most of us probably went, well, I did at least, but many of you are probably younger than me. But I learned to write by writing using a pen and a paper. And then later on, I started using keyboards and mobile devices. But our students are growing up in an age where it's probably more important in some ways for them to type. And so would you agree with me that this is also helping them to develop their typing skills and using keyboards, the position of the letters in a QWERTY keyboard, etc.? Yeah, yes, definitely. And Muhammad Salim says helps the students use words as noun and adjectives and yes, definitely differentiate between the different types of vocab items that we're asking them to do. So this is another example, and as you can see, these activities, even though we're asking our students to do a task, but we're not asking them to do something that seems too hard. So at the end of the day, the task is for them to write and to fill in 6 gaps, and so that's very simple in the end product. So we're asking them to read and to think about what they're producing, but the actual work they're doing is to write 6 words or phrases, and so that's not too daunting. It's not overwhelming for students when they're first approaching the activity. Okay. Yes, definitely, Dr. Sahar. Some of them are using smartphones, but I think it's the same. I think smartphones obviously doesn't have the same effect as a laptop, but we are also asking them to think about the position of the QWERTY keyboard, and so that could be something a skill that they would be developing when they're using their mobile phone, unless of course they're using autocorrect. That's a different story. Okay. I'm just going to show you the last activity in reading 1, which is reflect. So remember we started with engage at the beginning. Now we've gone all the way back to reflect. And the idea of doing this approach or having this approach is to make sure the learning goes back to where it started from. So we started off our students by thinking about the vocab and thinking about the language, thinking about the theme, but then at the end we asked them to look back and to reflect. And so this is just emphasizing what some of you have mentioned of self-assessment and self-learning and learner autonomy. But then at the end, there is still a quiz. So as you can see here, it says click next to activate or to access the quiz. So you come to the academic verbs for the R1, and this is an activity where it tests the students. And notice the language that we're giving our students here. It says test yourself. And so we're asking our students to think about self-assessment, think about self-learning, and assessing themselves. So the quiz here is about the knowledge of academic verbs, and it's by choosing the correct words to complete the sentences. And so obviously as a teacher I can preview, but the student would only have the option to go into the activity itself. But I'll show you what it looks like. So as you can see, this is an MCQ quiz. So it's very simple. It's not too overwhelming for students. It's not too terrifying or too scary for A2 students, but it is asking them to think about the correct word they would use. So plants absorb oxygen and so it would either be release, escape, or cause carbon dioxide. So thinking about the right academic phrase. And then you as a teacher, you could then take this one step further and then ask them to use these academic verbs in a paragraph that you've asked them to write, or a task you've given them. And so just moving them from the step of understanding and identifying onto the step of producing the language. And so they're becoming proficient in producing the correct language in an academic context. Okay, so I will just want to go back. I saw a question from Dr. Afnan. How many tasks should we give students per day? That's a really good question. I don't think there's a correct right or wrong answer. So I don't think I could say 20 or 1. I don't think there would be a correct answer here. I think it would depend on first of all the objectives that the ERC has. So how much of the milestones books do they want the students to have covered in a certain time period? I think that's something you would look at, and the objectives as well. So the objectives of the ELC, what do they want the students to have learned and achieved, and how does the content here help them? But also your knowledge of your students, and especially your knowledge of individual students as well within your class. So if you feel there's a particular student or a group of students who could really make use and benefit from the online content more than perhaps some of their colleagues, then you might say to them, you as a group or as individuals have to go online, have to complete these activities. But the good thing, as you've just seen, the activities are not too then they're not too scary. So we're not asking our students to write a 500-word essay, or we're not asking our students to read 3 or 4 chapters from a book. It's very it's been designed to be done in a very non-scary way. So it's giving our students a comfortable environment where they can practice, not something that puts them off learning. But Dr. Sahab has also said they do need to finish the task of each unit by the end of the unit. And I think that's a really good point. Yeah, that's a really good indication of where you should go. And I think it's also useful for students to have that knowledge of the structure. So you say to them, look, these are the activities, but we will expect you to have done the end of the task at the end of the unit by the end of the unit. And they know, they have a structure that they know they're following throughout the semester. So that's useful for them as well. Our students do tend to enjoy having a structure that they can fall back on and an academic schedule. Dr. Muhammad Ashfaq says, kindly show us how teachers can assign a task. Yes, I will do that. So rather than letting the student get lost in all these activities. So a simple way of doing that, Dr. Muhammad, is I'll just go back. So a simple way of doing that is by hiding activities. So that's the easiest way as a teacher. So let's say I don't want my students to see the reading 2. So I would just go to reading 2 and make it invisible, as you can see here. So it's now hidden from my students. And I would do the same for reading 1. And I would go here and I just make it invisible as well. And now if you look on the left of my screen where the mouse is, you will see that I have reading 1 is visible, and reading 2 and reading 3 are both hidden from my students. So that would be the easiest way you would do it. And there are other ways which I will show you in a minute. So going back to reading 1, if you wanted to sit down at the beginning of the course and set everything up as per the academic schedule, you could go here. I'll find it where you can actually make it visible for your students for a certain period. So I'll find that for you if you just bear with me. Okay, so there is a way of making it visible for your students for a certain time only, and I will find that for you, and I will confirm that inshallah after this session. But I don't want to waste your time now. But there is also something you can use here on the left called course schedule. So what you can do here is you can set tasks for your students. So if you go to the course schedule, and so this is not the settings. Yeah. The planner here under the class tools. So here you can create a task for your students, as you can see here, and you can add the content from within the unit. So I'll show you how to do that in a bit more detail in a second. So let's just finish the content and I'll come back to that. Dr. Fahad says, I think last year you even showed us how to use dates to set up the task. Yes, I'm going to show you that now, Dr. Fahad. I'm just going to finish looking at the content together with you. So I'm just going to show you some of the speaking activities as well. Okay, so let me show you how to set the due dates for your students, because there are no more questions now. So you would go to the class tool here, and you would go to your planner. And then let's say you wanted to, let's say that my task for my students was to do the reading one, and I would do create task here, and I would add reading one, and I would add a description if I wanted to. I don't have to. And I would make sure this is available from today, which is the 2nd of September, until, let's say Friday at 10 o'clock. And then I would just create that. But I could also add a restriction here. And this is, I can make it hidden until, or I can make it visible until, or visible between. So these are different options you have. I can either make the item hidden until it's visible, until it's due, or I can make it visible between a certain date. So I could make it visible between, Friday of the weekend until the next Thursday before the next weekend, or I can make it hidden starting. So I could make it visible until the last week of the course. And I would say to my students, on the last week of the course, all of the content will be hidden. So you have until the last week to do all of the content. And this is up to your personal setup of the course, and obviously the ELC directive as well on how you would, how would you set up, the activities within your course. Do you want the activities to be hidden by default, or do you want them to be visible by default? Do you want them to be visible for a certain time period, or do you want them to be hidden after a certain date? So this is all something that you obviously would follow the ELC's directive, but you would also be able to set up from the options here. And the way you do that is, just to remind you, is to go to class tools and then go to the planner here. Okay, so just to read out the comment from Dr. Sahar, who says, please, dear colleagues, make sure your students have covered all of the tasks of each unit once you finish the unit. I think that's a really good approach as well. So the way that you would see how your students are doing and what they've completed is you would go to tracking here, as you can see, and you would click on the grade book to see all of their marks, or you would click on the user progress just to see how many activities they've done and how far they've got within the course. Obviously, there's no point me going into the grade book in this course because I don't think any of the students have done any activities, but we can check Yeah, I don't have any students. Basically, the only student is myself, as a just a demo, and I'm not a very good student because I haven't done any activities. No, but you get the idea. So this is a grade book, and it tells you this particular student has done basically zero activities here, zero activities here, zero activities here. But you can also um, go in deeper and see, the individual grades for the students, and what they're and how they have done within the course. You can also download this as an Excel file to submit to the portal or to any other platform that you use for grades as well. Okay, great. Okay, so I'm not gonna. I did promise that we would try and finish earlier than we had done in the past, so I will try to keep to that as much as I can. I do want to show you two more things for you. The first is communication. So the communication tab offers you three different things you can use with your students. Now, I know that most of these will be available within Blackboard as well, so you might not want to use them on OxfordLearn, but you can chat with your students, and this is very similar to a live chat function, which we're all familiar with. You can set up discussion boards. And discussion boards are really nice, and I think it was Terry who talked about discussion boards. But these are really nice ways of engaging the students in a wider range of topics, possibly outside of the theme of the unit. And you can also have the message function to use with your students, which is very similar to an email function where you would send them a message and they would respond. So these are three tools you can use within the platform with your students. I'm just going to check the comments. Dr. Mohammed says, kindly show how teachers can give feedback on individual activities within the platform. I will show you that, Dr. Mohammed. Dr. Hillary says, how to prevent students from cheating with each other with these activities. That's a really good question. Well, in terms of the platform offering an ideal solution, I don't think there is one. However, I think it's worth mentioning to students they are graded if you choose to grade them on their online practice activities. But I think it's also worth highlighting to them that this is an opportunity for them to learn and to develop themselves and not just to get the right grade. And so possibly just highlighting the fact that this is there to help them could possibly deter them from looking to cheat when doing these activities. Dr. Sahar says, we faced a problem last year that some students would complete the activities, but the schools were not recording it in the sheet. Has this problem been fixed? I recall that problem, Dr. Sahar. I do recall there were some students who said they had completed activities, but they weren't recorded in the gradebook. I don't think this. I think this was a problem with the individual student accounts, and I hope this year it's been resolved. I do advise students to use laptops as much as possible. I know it's tempting for them to log in with their phones because most people are used to using their phones more than laptops these days. But I would advise them to use laptops, and the reason for that is when this platform was developed, it was developed, for technology that would run on laptops, browsers that run within Windows, for example, rather than browsers that run, on iOS on an iPhone or a browser within Android on an Android phone. So that's one thing that I would suggest to the students. Another thing is, if that happens, please do ask them to please contact me or my colleagues, and we'll try to find a solution as soon as possible. We will, Dr. Hillary says they tend to generate cheat sheets and then send it around. Dr. Sahar says let them cheat. It's for independent learning. Yeah, there's only so much you can do. I do agree to prevent cheating. We can advise our students, but if they decide that they don't want to do the work on their own, and it is work outside of class and outside of exams, there's not really that much we can do, to counter that. Okay, so Dr. Sahad has just mentioned that any problems with the codes or the platform, please report to your coordinator, and then they will contact the ELC. And obviously, I'm around to help as well, inshallah, with the ELC e-learning team. Dr. Sahad says they call it group work. Well, I would actually argue that if they are all participating in getting the answers right, then that is not necessarily a bad thing. But if one person has a cheat sheet and they're just copying, then that's another story. Dr. Gulshan says collaboration. Yeah. Okay, so there are two other things that I want to show you, and inshallah I'll try to finish by 9:30 today, as I promised. So let me answer Dr. Muhammad Ashraf's question on how to give feedback on individual activities within the platform. Okay, so activities like the reading task that we saw, and some of the speaking tasks, which I'll show you, and some of the writing tasks, those are all automatically marked by the system, by the platform. So the platform will evaluate the students' answers, and it will give them a grade, and that grade will appear in the student's gradebook, and it will also appear in the gradebook of the class where the teacher can follow their students' work. The only tasks that the teacher has to mark are the speaking task and the writing task. So not the writing activities and not the speaking activities, just the task. And I'll show you how to do that here. So the student would go to the speaking here, and there would be Explore 1, Explore 2, Explore 3, Explore 4, and all of these are automatically marked by the platform. So you don't have to do anything here, basically. Now, the speaking one task, as you can see, it does give instructions to students on how to do this and how to send it to the teacher. So the student would click on do the task, and I will do that with you in a second, and select record and send it to the teacher using Dropbox. So let's look at this together. So I would go to the next page. No, sorry, my apologies. Okay, so they would add attachments here. And as you can see here, if the student has recorded their task on another file, like an MP3 file, using their phone, then they can add the attachments here using, upload from their from their laptop. They can use a link if they've saved it in SoundCloud, for example. They can link it from Google Drive or OneDrive. If they haven't pre-recorded the task, they can click on record here, and it gives them the option to either record audio or video, and then it brings up another, as you can see, another window. And so I'll just click on new recording, and it's now recording my voice here, and I'll stop recording, and they can listen to themselves. They can re-record until they're happy with their task. So again, this is adding that element of doing the task at their own pace, building their confidence, and allowing them to self-assess their work. So this is all adding to their self-learning. Once they're happy with this, they can click on add, as I've done here. They can write in the title and the description for their teacher, and they click on add, as you can see here, and then it uploads it to the teacher's Dropbox. And what the teacher then does is the teacher goes to where it says class tools here and goes to the Dropbox. And they would go here and they would find their student's task listed under S1 task here. Now, obviously, there won't be anything here because I'm not a student logged in right now. I'm logged in as a teacher, but they would find all of their user submissions here, and they would listen to the audio, and then it would give them the option of giving the students a grade, a manual grade. So you would go in and you would say, okay, this student deserves 7 out of 10, and you would just click submit, and it would take that grade from you and put it in the class grade book, and it would also put it in the student's grade book, so then the students know what kind of grade they were given for their task. And this is something you might make use of, and it's really helpful for you as a teacher and for the students. But when you're giving the students a grade, you can also give them feedback as well. So it's not just giving them 7 out of 10. You can tell them what they did, what they got right and things they did well, and things they didn't do so well. So you could comment on maybe improving if it's a speaking task, maybe improving their pronunciation, maybe their stress, etc. Whatever the focus of the task is, whatever the objective is, you can focus on that. And the same for the writing as well. It's exactly the same. The students would write, they would upload maybe a Word document, and it would appear in your Dropbox, and then you would mark it and give feedback to the students and grade them. But obviously, once we have the system set up, if you feel that you would like to arrange, the ELC would like to arrange another session with Oxford, we're more than happy to do that, and we can look at this in more detail, inshallah. Okay, I'm just looking at some of the comments. So Dr. Hillary says, actually, speaking tasks could be done through Blackboard if needed. Yeah, so if the ELC decides to do speaking tasks through Blackboard, that's fine. This is something that you may choose to use, you may choose not to use, and this is up to the ELC to agree with the teachers, inshallah. So Dr. Neda says, can you please tell how can I make my account instructors account? I'm asking on behalf of my colleagues who are new to ELC. Is it via register and organization tab? So Dr. Neda, I don't know if you were with us when we first started talking about OxfordLearn, but I'll just repeat this. I would say for the next 2 or 3 days, just bear with us. So we're in the process of setting up the accounts and getting teacher codes and everything ready for you. And then once we're past that, I'm sure your colleagues at the ELC will tell you what exactly you need to do as a teacher and what your students need to do to get everything set up on the platform. Dr. Fahad says, Dropbox will allow students time to practice their speaking task and post a version they are confident with. Yeah, I definitely agree. And this is something that, we're trying to get our students, we're trying to get them to practice the language as much as possible, but also to self-assess themselves before they're happy and they're confident with the language they've produced. Okay, so Dr. Sahar has asked me to explain the difference between instructors and students sign up and registration on the platform, just as a reminder for everybody. Yes, so the idea that I'm hoping that we can finalize tomorrow or over the weekend is that inshallah we will either set up the teacher's account fully for you. So we'll set up the usernames and the passwords, and we'll just give you the username and the password you need to log in. Or we will send you invites to your email, and then we'll give you an access code, and the instructions in the email will tell you how to access your account. And then we can either do the same for the students. We can ask them to log in and join the class, or we can also look at creating accounts for the students as well, inshallah. So our aim this year is, inshallah, to make the process very smooth and very simple for everybody involved. So, bear with me for the next day or two. I'm just, just waiting for my colleagues to finalize all of the codes and everything. But my aim is to not give the teachers lots of work to worry about, or codes or registration and things like that. Okay, so one last thing, and I'm not going to go into so much detail about this. I'm just going to tell you that it's there, and I'm going to just show you the bare bones of it. And then if you feel that this is something we'd like to go into more detail in the future, we can do that together, inshallah. So it's just something that we have in the advanced tool, in the advanced tools tab here, and it's called self-assessments. So this is basically just the option to set up assessment for your students. So sort of mini tests or mini quizzes. And I'll just show you some very quick examples of what we can do with this if you chose to use it in the future. You may find that some of the tools that you have in Blackboard or other platforms are easier to use. And to a certain extent, I would possibly agree with you. But this is here if you want to make use of it. So I would call this test 1, for example. No category. Let's add a category here. So save and close. So I've added test. And as you can see here, so the test one is just me calling my test a test, basically. And I could call it midterm, I could call it unit 1 quiz, I could call it anything I wanted to, basically. And then here, as you can see, my mouse is hovering over the option to add or edit questions for my assessment. And so there are ways of doing this, but I'll show you just some small examples. So the first is a new. So what type of question do I want to add to my students? Do I want to give them a true or false? Do I want to give them an MCQ? Do I want to give them short answer, long answer, etc.? So let's just go with true or false questions, as you can see here. And it's basically, I would say, the question text, and the question would be, you know, and that could be my question. That's a very simple question, obviously. And then the answers are either true or false. And so let's look at. I'm just going to mark the correct answer here. So is it true or is it false? Now, this is not a true or false question. I realize that. So this is the question is wrong in itself. But, so I could say, basically, is the past tense of eat ate? And then we could say true or false. So this is just a very small example of how to create an item here. And I could save this. And then this is the first question. And then obviously I could go in and give this. I could edit the number of attempts. I could edit the question here. And I could also go in and I'll just show you how to add a mark to this. So I could, yeah, I could add the feedback and a hint as well. And I also have the option to save and copy this as well. So this is just a small example. I promised I wouldn't go into too much detail about this, but it's just something that's available on the system for you to use and to add some more questions. As you see here, you can add ordering questions, you can add arithmetic questions, and you can add anything basically you wanted to on the system. So you could use multiple choice, the long answer questions, etc. So that was the final thing that I wanted to show you. Obviously, very briefly. I'll just check. There's a question from Dr. Henry. Dr. Sahar, would you prefer the teachers create tests on the Blackboard system or here on Oxford LMS? So that's a question for Dr. Sahar from Dr. Hillary. Okay. Can the test be imported? I think there is a certain format that you would have to follow, Dr. Amani. So there is an import button, as you can see here, but it does have to be in a certain format, and I think I'll just show you that here. So there has to be, it has to be in a CSV format, and just give you an example of what it looks like. So as you can see, it does get quite technical, to be honest. So for example, for a short answer question type, you do have to enter the correct answer here. So it is. I would definitely agree with that. It is something that's right. Could be enough for your online practice with your students. Okay, so Dr. Sahar says all quizzes should be on Blackboard. So I guess that's answered the question. And the midterms and finals are face-to-face. Okay, that's something that I didn't know. That's useful to know. Okay, so I don't know if we have Dr. Ahmed Qadi with us in the meeting, but Dr. Samar did mention that he wanted to say a few words. So let me just stop sharing my screen. And I will see if Dr. Ahmed is still with us. I will give him mic status so he can kindly share a few words with us. No, it's my pleasure. Thank you very much, everybody. It's been absolutely great talking to you, and thank you very much for being such a great audience and participating so much over the last 3 days. You know, you've made the training enjoyable for